Happy New Year and good afternoon, everybody. Today is going to be all about some loin back, baby back ribs. I'm going to be cooking those on the Weber Kettle today. Take a look and I hope you enjoy. Well, here is the star of the day, loin back, baby back ribs. I like putting them inside of a baking pan or cookie sheet. That way, anything that drips while I'm trimming, as you see here, or when I'm putting them, anywhere in the kitchen, or even as I'm seasoning, everything falls into the pan as opposed to all over my counters, over the floor. You can kind of see a little bit of the runoff there already. Now, right there, I'm just trimming off a little bit of loose ends and things that will just come out as little charred bits in the barbecue grill that are not going to be really good for eating. They'll come out as like these little crunchy, dark, black, hard things that I really don't want. Now, these two bones that I'm about to cut off the end here, those are just where the meat thins out to a point that I'm not going to have consistent cooking from one end to the other. Now, that is not going to go to waste, but I'm not going to cook that with the entire rack. I can put that into the grill and cook it separately and just have it as a snack. Just have it as something that lets me know how the rest of my ribs are going to taste, kind of like a precursor to the finished product before I finish cooking. And you can see in the processing, there are some other little loose bits there I'm taking off. Now keep in mind, none of that I'm taking off will go to waste. I have a foil pan, I'll put all of those pieces in, render down the fat, and I will use that fat later on in my cook to baste my ribs as they cook. I find using that just enhances the flavor more and just gives more of what it is. Now this first container is just a mixture of salt and pepper. This one is Lowry's seasoned salt. And this last one is garlic powder. Before I season the backside, I want to score the membrane. I'm not going to remove the entire thing, but between the bones and just down the length of the entire rack. And then again, my salt and pepper, holding my shakers nice and high to get a nice even spread. My Lowry seasoned salt and my garlic powder. Now I want to make sure I'm getting seasoning on all sides as well as those exposed sides there. Using all three canisters, making sure I get good coverage on both ends. And just make sure that I get a nice even coat on the top and bottom of the rack, as well as both edges and the ends. Getting the seasoning done first and letting that sink in while my coals are lighting is my method. And I like doing it that way. It lets the seasoning get through my meat while I get my coals lit. Junk mail is free, and that's what I use to light my chimney. Pouring the coals just to one end of the slow and sizzle there, and that will make me a nice fire. I'm going to have it at about 250. That'll slowly creep across to the other side, maintaining that temperature. There's enough heat over those coals, but I don't want to have my hand over there, so using that tool and one hand, I put my grill grate safely over the coals. Charcoal is in. I want to close my grill, give my vents their first setting. Also swish any fallen bits of charcoal and ash out of the way. My grill's at the desired temp I'd like to cook. I'm going to take the bits that I cut off that's inside of that pan. That's got a little bit of beef tallow on top plus some seasonings. That's going to go onto the grill. I just want to render all of that down. And there are my ribs. Back inside once again, I'm going to take some foil and a baked potato that I'm going to have, or a raw potato I'm going to have with my ribs. I like to go ahead and prick the surface of the potato on four sides at the very least. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, massage it all around that potato, and that's a nice sized potato, just a little bit of sea salt. Now wrapping it up from one diagonal end to the other and fold in the ends. Now the ribs are going to be a several hour cook, so the potato is not going to go on right away. My temperature did rise some. I'm adjusting my vent on top just a little bit more closed. And I'm just going to sit here and relax with my cup of tea and my baked potato waiting to go on. My temperature is coming back down to where I like to cook. Now, I'm not opening the grill. All I'm doing is just showing you that my Weber is maintaining a good temp. My phone timer is set for about 20 minutes, and that's when I'll go out each time and check my temperature and adjust the vents if needed. This is about 2.5 hours in, and I have at least 2 hours more to go. I'm gonna put my potato on, let that get cooked and nice and soft. And you can see the sun's already gone down. I believe I'm a little over 2 hours at this point. What I'm about to do is take a temperature reading of the meat itself. Taking this temperature reading, I see I'm sitting close to 140, 137, 138. I'm going to use the rendered fat from the pieces I cut off to baste my ribs. And I find basting in its own natural juices makes a really nice flavor onto your ribs. It adds more of its own self to itself. And yes, there is some beef tallow added to that mix, but all that does is just enhance the flavor. And this does take some time, but that's okay. I'm here to do it right, not quickly. This is not a timed method. The only timing I use on my entire method is however so often I go back and check my temperature. So this is about 20 minutes later again, getting some more of that tallow out of there and basting my ribs. Now, there are really only 3 steps in making very good foolproof ribs. One, you want to maintain the temperature of your grill. Now, you've seen me adjust my vents a few times. I set a timer on my phone for 20 minutes, and I just check my temperatures every 20 minutes. I don't open the grill every time, but I do check my temperature. Right here, number 2, you need to have a good thermometer where you can check the temperature of your meat. Now, there's a difference between cooking to doneness and cooking to tenderness. You want to cook to a certain temperature, decide whether you're going to use a wrapping method or not. And either way you want to go with that is fine, but just decide which one you're going to do and experiment with it. Now, here I'm adding some beef tallow, and that's going to give me some added moisture inside the wrap. Now, step 3 is your seasonings. Now, you saw that in the beginning of the video. All I used was salt, pepper, Lowry seasoned salt, and garlic powder, and that was all. Now, that's a step that's taken from guys that cook a lot better than me. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is something that's already been proven to work very well. And if I can take that much that I already know works well and then implement the learning curve of maintaining a good temperature on my grill and periodically checking the temperature of the meat, utilizing those methods, you will come out with consistently good results every time. Now, I don't usually add barbecue sauce when I'm cooking ribs or any barbecue. I like to make sure that I'm not masking the flavor of the meat itself. I've added some butter to that, as well as some other spices and seasonings to make it suitable to what I really kind of like, and some salt to it so it takes some of that sweet flavor out of there. A nice tight wrap on these ribs. Now, I wrapped at a temperature of close to 160. I wasn't going for wrapping for time, but wrapping for that temperature. Somewhere between 160 to 170 is where I like to wrap personally. There may be others like to do it differently. Unwrapping it here, I'm into this cook close to 4 hours. You can see the moisture that's built up on the back side of the ribs. So these are going really well, and look at all the moisture inside the foil wrap. Now these are going to go back on the grill. I'm going to baste with the liquid that's inside the foil wrap, and I'm going to put it to bed for probably another 30 minutes to a half hour. I'm just spreading that around so it gets nice and even across the top of my ribs. And the reason I'm doing this and shutting it down for about 30 to 45 minutes. So that moisture that's I'm putting on there, which has a mixture of barbecue sauce, will become like another layer of flavor on there with the smoke from the grill. Now we're done. My baked potatoes cook for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. My ribs are done, and I am ready to eat. I'm going to dress my baked potato first. If you watch one of my previous videos where I was doing this, yeah, that's hot. What I like to do is split open my baked potato, and this one was pretty big. I'm only going to have half of this. But I like to cut my baked potato down the center and then make some slits sideways. And that gives a place for the melted butter to flow. But before the butter goes on, some onion flakes, some chives, some sea salt, and then some pats of butter. Now, as the butter melts, it'll soften the chives and soften the onion flakes or the minced onion, and that flavor from the minced onion and the chives will just extend itself right into the potato and just makes for a very good flavor. I'm not going to try and play expert and cut it from the top. I'm going to cut it from where I can see the bones and get a nice, good serving for myself. Nice smoke penetration. They're done all the way through. But when we're checking for temperature, like I said earlier, we're not checking for doneness. We're checking for the temperature itself. And at the same time, we're probing for tenderness. Now, one of the things you do want to pay attention to when you're checking your temperature as you cook is feel how your thermometer goes into your meat, and you're also probing for tenderness. These were 4 hours on the dot on the Weber Kettle using the Slow and Sizzle with the water pan. And these came out really good. I wish you could smell this right now. I'm only going to have about half of that big baked potato and just 3 bones for now. And I have some maybe tomorrow sometime. This is the eve of New Year's Day. I hope you're having a happy new year. I'm going to enjoy these right now. Like I always say, none of this matters if it doesn't taste good. Let's give it a shot. Mm. Putting my minced onion and chives and then the butter on top just brings that flavor through really, really well. And these came out really nice and moist. I'm not much of a sauce person, but I did put together a sauce tonight for these. Let's see how it tastes on these. Tender, clean bite, really good flavor. Sauce is not masking the meat. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. Sorry for licking my fingers, but these are really, really good. I hope you get outside and cook. I'm talking with my mouth full. And until next time, like, share, subscribe. Baby back, loin back ribs on the Weber Kettle. You've got to try these. These came out perfect.